Imagine waking up in the heart of the Australian outback, where the red earth stretches to the horizon and the nearest neighbor might be over 100 kilometers away. Now imagine that in this place, often cut off from the world, you can instantly join a video call, access real-time weather data, or stream high-definition educational content for your children, all thanks to invisible beams from a swarm of satellites orbiting high above the Earth. This is not science fiction. It is the rapidly approaching reality as Australia leaps into the next generation of digital connectivity. But as this dream takes shape, a pressing question emerges. Who will hold the keys to Australia's digital future, and at what cost to national independence and security? Australia's relationship with space technology began back in the early 1960s, at the dawn of the space age. The country played a pivotal role as a host for NASA's deep space communications, constructing ground stations that relayed signals during the Apollo moon landings. These early investments were not just about supporting international partners, they were about overcoming Australia's own unique geographic challenges. With a landmass almost as large as the continental United States, but a population spread thinly across vast distances, Australia has always struggled to connect its far-flung communities. For decades, satellite technology was the only viable solution for reaching the remote cattle stations of the Northern Territory, the isolated mining camps in Western Australia, and the tiny island communities scattered off the mainland. As the world transitioned from analog telephony to the internet, the limitations of satellite technology became more glaring. Latency, bandwidth, and reliability issues left many Australians on the wrong side of the digital divide. By the late 2010s, the urgency to bridge this gap had become a national priority. In 2018, the Australian government established the Australian Space Agency, signaling a new era of ambition. The agency was tasked with driving innovation, creating high-tech jobs, and, critically, ensuring that Australia was not left vulnerable in the emerging domain of space. The government's vision was bold. By the year 2030, the space sector should contribute at least $12 billion to GDP and create up to 20,000 new jobs. To reach this, Australia needed both homegrown innovation and strategic partnerships. In this context, the arrival of Telesat, a Canadian satellite powerhouse, and its partnership with Vocus, a leading Australian fiber and network solutions provider, marks a significant turning point. Together, they are building the nation's first Lightspeed Low Earth Orbit, LEO, landing station in New South Wales. This project is not merely another technical upgrade. It is a strategic move that could redefine Australia's digital landscape for decades to come. Vocus brings to the table a sprawling network of fiber optic cables, stretching over 27,000 kilometers across the Australian continent and extending via submarine cables to New Zealand, Asia, and the United States. These cables form the backbone of Australia's internet, supporting everything from banking transactions in Sydney to telemedicine consultations in the Outback. By integrating this fiber network with Telesat's planned Lightspeed satellite constellation, consisting of 156 satellites orbiting at approximately 1,335 kilometers above the Earth, Australia will gain access to ultra-fast, secure, and low-latency internet connections previously unimaginable in such remote areas. But what sets the Lightspeed constellation apart from earlier generations of satellite technology? For one, the satellites will be interconnected with advanced optical laser links, enabling data to be transferred at the speed of light between satellites before reaching terrestrial networks. This promises latency times comparable to, or even better than, traditional undersea cables, a game-changer for sectors like finance, emergency response, and remote education, where milliseconds can make all the difference. Lightspeed is designed to deliver an astonishing 10 terabits per second of total network capacity, with each satellite operating in harmony to ensure seamless coverage and redundancy. As Asit Tandon, Chief Network and Information Officer of Telesat, puts it, Vocus is an ideal partner to deliver the resilient, scalable terrestrial infrastructure that not only serves as a key interconnect point for customer data, but also further strengthens Australia's digital infrastructure resilience. Vocus, for its part, already operates 30 ground stations, reinforcing its reputation as the backbone of next-generation networks in the region. Ashley Neal, head of Vocus Space and Wireless Operations, echoes this confidence. We're proud to be partnering with Telesat on establishing its network in Australia. Our infrastructure provides the critical reliability needed for LEO networks. But the story is not just about technology. It is also about strategic positioning in a fiercely competitive global market. the satellite internet sector is in the midst of a renaissance. Starlink, owned by SpaceX and led by Elon Musk, has become a household name, offering affordable, consumer-focused services that have already transformed internet access in rural North America and Europe. Eutelsat OneWeb, another key player, targets enterprise and government customers, while Amazon's ambitious Project Kuiper is preparing to launch over 3,200 satellites, aiming to dominate the skies with sheer scale. Australia, with its vast geography and relatively small population, is a unique test case for these global giants. Chris Quilty of Quilty Analytics points out, Telesat Lightspeed is targeting the enterprise and government sectors, differentiating itself from consumer-focused services like Starlink. This strategic focus could position Telesat and Vocus as the backbone for critical infrastructure, supporting hospitals, mining operations, emergency services, and even military communications. Yet with opportunity comes a new set of risks. Despite the promise of sovereignty and innovation, Australia's leap into the LEO era is still heavily reliant on foreign technology and investment. The Security of Critical Infrastructure Act, passed in 2018, imposes strict regulations on satellite operators to ensure that Australia's data and communications remain secure. However, as telecommunications analyst Paul Boud cautions, reliance on a single operator like Starlink presents a dangerous situation for critical infrastructure. If control over these networks rests primarily with overseas companies, Australia could find itself vulnerable to geopolitical tensions, shifting commercial interests, or even cyber attacks. Luke Coleman from the Communications Alliance offers a possible remedy. The best solution to the issue of sovereignty is competition in the LEO satellite market. In theory, having multiple independent providers reduces the risk of a single point of failure and allows the government to enforce higher standards of security and transparency. But competition is only healthy as long as it is truly open and sustainable. The massive upfront costs of launching hundreds or thousands of satellites mean that only the largest, best-funded companies can compete. As Matt Tetlow, CEO of Innovor, notes, it can be extremely expensive launching satellites, and I don't know how other rocket companies can compete with SpaceX. What does all this mean for the average Australian, especially those living outside the major cities? If the Telesat Vocus partnership delivers on its promises, the impact could be transformative. Industry experts predict that increased competition from multiple satellite providers could drive internet prices down by as much as 15 to 20% over the next 5 years. This is not just about saving money, it is about unleashing new opportunities. Reliable, high-speed connectivity will enable telehealth consultations for remote patients, allow students in small towns to access the same digital resources as their urban peers, and make it possible for entrepreneurs to launch businesses from the most isolated corners of the continent. Consider the example of a cattle station in the Kimberley, where internet access has traditionally been limited to slow, expensive satellite links. With new LEO networks, ranchers can access up-to-the-minute weather models, order supplies online, and participate in real-time video conferences, all without ever having to leave their property. In mining, ultra-reliable connectivity means that autonomous vehicles and remote-controlled machinery can operate safely and efficiently, boosting productivity while reducing the need for workers to live in harsh, isolated conditions. The economic impact could be profound. Some forecasts suggest that improved digital access and productivity could deliver a 10 to 15% boost in GDP for remote regions, unlocking billions of dollars in new value. Enhanced connectivity will also make it easier for government agencies to deliver essential services, from emergency management to education, and support the growth of new industries like agritech, renewable energy, and digital tourism. However, there are significant challenges to navigate. The very reliance that enables this burst of innovation can also become a liability. If foreign partners withdraw, are acquired by hostile actors, or are subject to political pressure in their home countries, Australia's digital infrastructure could be at risk. As more and more sensitive data flows through global networks, questions about privacy, control, and data sovereignty will only intensify. Johanna Weaver of the Tech Policy Design Center at the Australian National University notes, Starlink has a legal obligation to mitigate threats to Starlink internet access in Australia under the Security of Critical Infrastructure Act. But legal obligations are only as strong as the enforcement mechanisms behind them, and the global nature of these networks means that jurisdictional boundaries are often blurry. Moreover, the rapid pace of technological change presents its own risks. Lightspeed's optical laser links and 10 terabit per second capacity are cutting edge today, but the relentless march of innovation means that these features could become baseline expectations within a few years. Amazon's Project Kuiper, with its plans for over 3,200 satellites, raises the specter of market saturation. If too many players flood the market, weaker companies could be pushed out, ultimately reducing consumer choice and leaving Australia once again dependent on a handful of global giants. So what practical steps can Australians take in this shifting landscape? For individuals and businesses, it is vital to stay informed about the evolving market. Evaluate service providers not just on price but also on reliability and security, and advocate for transparent regulatory oversight. Remote communities in particular should engage with policymakers to ensure that their unique needs are represented in decisions about infrastructure and investment. On the policy front, the Australian government faces a delicate balancing act. Investments of over $1 billion are planned for the next decade to support space-related activities, including satellite communications, Earth observation, and space situational awareness. These investments are critical for building sovereign capabilities, but they must be paired with clear, enforceable regulations that protect national interests without stifling innovation. International partnerships will remain essential, but Australia should also prioritize the development of homegrown technologies and the cultivation of a skilled workforce. This might involve additional funding, potentially as much as $500 million, allocated specifically for research, cybersecurity, and talent development in the space sector. Policymakers must also consider the broader socio-economic impacts. Improved digital inclusion can help close the gap between urban and rural communities, creating a more equitable society. Enhanced connectivity will support economic diversification, making Australia more resilient to global shocks and better positioned to compete in the digital economy. However, these benefits can only be realized if the risks of dependency and market concentration are managed proactively. Looking to the future, several scenarios could unfold. In the best case, robust competition among multiple satellite providers leads to lower costs, better service quality, and a surge in innovation. Rural and remote communities are fully integrated into the digital economy, and Australia becomes a leader in space-based technologies. In a less favorable scenario, market saturation and consolidation leave the country dependent on a small number of foreign-owned networks, raising the risk of service disruptions and security breaches. In the worst case, geopolitical tensions or regulatory failures expose critical infrastructure to interference or attack, undermining public trust and national security. To guard against these risks, Australia should foster collaboration between government, industry, and research institutions. This includes establishing public-private partnerships to share expertise and investment, promoting open standards for interoperability and security, and ensuring that market rules create a level playing field for all participants. The government could also consider establishing a national cyber resilience center focused on space infrastructure, modeled after similar initiatives in Europe and North America. For everyday viewers, the message is clear. The future of connectivity is being shaped right now, and its consequences will be felt for generations. Whether you are a student in Alice Springs, a healthcare worker in Tasmania, or a tech entrepreneur in Perth, the choices made today about satellite networks will influence your opportunities tomorrow. Australia's history in space is richer than many realize. From hosting NASA's moon landings in the 1960s to launching the first homegrown satellite, FedSat, in 2002, the nation has always punched above its weight. The Lightspeed Landing Station in New South Wales is not just a technical milestone, it is the latest chapter in a quietly proud legacy of innovation and global collaboration. So, will increased competition truly enhance security and affordability for Australia's digital future? The answer is cautiously optimistic. Multiple players in the satellite market, coupled with vigilant regulatory oversight, position Australians to benefit from lower prices and better services. But the challenge of digital sovereignty remains ever present. Ongoing investment in domestic technology, robust oversight of foreign networks, and a relentless focus on security are not optional. They are essential. As this new era unfolds, a final question lingers. How much control is Australia willing to relinquish in pursuit of the benefits that global innovation brings? Should the nation prioritize digital sovereignty over instant world-class connectivity? Or is there a middle path where strategic partnerships and homegrown capabilities can coexist? We want to hear your thoughts. If you found these insights helpful, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. What do you think? Is it worth trading some control for the promise of universal access? Or should Australia double down on building its own digital future? Leave your opinions in the comments below, and stay tuned